"Your sister is pregnant," my mother had whispered, her voice a fragile thread unraveling in the storm. There was a pause, a heartbeat of silence, and then the rest of her words detonated with the force of 1,000 betrayals. "By your fiancé." The room spun, a kaleidoscope of memories tangling with the present. I saw Kaoru's smile, the promise of forever etched in his eyes, and my sister Yuki beside him, her laughter a melody I had always cherished. How had love twisted into this monstrous betrayal? I stumbled back, the doorknob slipping from my grasp as if it, too, rejected the harshness of reality. My knees buckled, and I found myself crumpled on the floor, the cold seeping into my bones, a stark contrast to the firestorm raging within. Tears, unbidden and relentless, blurred my vision, their warmth a cruel reminder of the sister I had loved fiercely, the fiancé I had trusted implicitly. Why? The word escaped my lips, a broken whisper that hung heavily in the air. But the answer was elusive, wrapped in layers of deceit and hidden truths. Yet, in the depths of my despair, a flicker of resolve sparked, embers of independence igniting from the ashes of my shattered heart. I would not be the silent victim of their betrayal. I would rise, reclaiming the pieces of myself they had sought to destroy. My resolve hardened, a steel edge weaving through the fabric of my grief. The tears continued to fall, but with each drop I felt lighter, as if shedding the weight of expectations and dreams that no longer belonged to me. In the mirror, my reflection stared back, eyes red-rimmed but burning with determination. I was no longer the naive girl who had believed in fairy tales spun from lies. I was a woman reborn in the crucible of heartache, ready to chart a new course, one free of their shadows. The first step was confronting Kaoru. The very thought sent a shiver of anticipation through me, a mix of dread and grim satisfaction. He had made his choices, woven his web of deceit, and now he would face the consequences. The cafe where we met was a place of shared memories, but today it felt foreign, a stage set for a confrontation years in the making. Kaoru sat across from me, his eyes reflecting a mixture of guilt and apprehension. For a moment, silence stretched between us, the only sound the muted chatter of strangers oblivious to the drama unfolding in their midst. "Why?" I finally asked, my voice steady, betraying none of the tempest swirling within. It was a simple question, yet it carried the weight of 1,000 unspoken words. His gaze faltered, the mask of confidence slipping to reveal the boyish vulnerability I had once adored. "I didn't mean for it to happen," he replied, his voice a fragile whisper. "It just did." A bitter laugh escaped my lips, the sound foreign even to my ears. "Things like this don't just happen, Kaoru. You made a choice." He flinched, the truth cutting deeper than any blade. "I love you, but—" "Stop," I interrupted, raising a hand. "You don't get to say that." The words were a balm, soothing the raw edges of my soul, a declaration of my newfound strength. As we parted ways, I felt a sense of closure, a chapter ending with the finality of a period. But life, with its penchant for unexpected twists, was not yet done with me. A week later, I received a letter, the handwriting unmistakably Yuki's, and my heart clenched with a mix of trepidation and reluctant curiosity. Inside, her words were a tangle of apologies and explanations, each sentence a thread pulling at the fragile seams of my resolve. "I never meant to hurt you," she wrote, a refrain that echoed hollowly. "But there's something you need to know." The revelation was a thunderclap, a truth darker and more twisted than I could have imagined. Kaoru had been coerced, manipulated by our father into a relationship with Yuki, a puppet in a game of power and legacy. The betrayal ran deeper, the rot spreading to the very foundations of my family. Stunned, I realized that my father had orchestrated this, valuing his ambitions over our happiness. The tears returned, but this time they were not of grief, but of a fierce, liberating fury. The world had tried to break me, but I would not let it define me. I stood at a crossroads, the path of revenge tantalizingly close. But I knew that true independence lay not in retribution, but in rising above the wreckage, crafting a life of my own design. In the end, I chose to walk away from them all, Kaoru, Yuki, and the family that had betrayed me. I would carve a new path, one fueled by the fire of my own dreams, the promise of a future untainted by the shadows of the past. As I stepped into the world, the rain had ceased, leaving behind a landscape cleansed and renewed, much like my heart. The tears had dried, but the memories remained, a reminder of the love I had lost, the betrayal I had endured, and the strength I had uncovered within myself. The rain poured like a relentless symphony, each drop a note in the overture of my unfolding heartbreak. I stood there, drenched, at the threshold of the home that once held warmth and laughter, now an echoing hall of betrayal. My heart ached with every beat, a relentless reminder of the promises shattered by those I trusted most. Why? I whispered into the darkness, my voice barely audible over the storm outside. But the shadows offered no comfort, no answers, only the cold truth that clung to my skin like the rain. How could they, my sister and my fiancé, entwine their destinies in a web of deceit, leaving me ensnared in their treachery? The memories flooded back, unbidden, each one a dagger twisting deeper into my soul. His smile, her laughter, every cherished moment now, a cruel mockery. I remembered the promise he made under the cherry blossoms, a vow of forever, now as fragile and ephemeral as the petals that danced around us that day. And my sister, her eyes always reflecting a hidden sadness, now revealed as a harbinger of my own sorrow. I stormed through the house, each step a declaration of my resolve, though my heart felt as if it were breaking with every movement. I found them in the living room, their faces a canvas of guilt and fear. The room, once so familiar, now felt alien, each piece of furniture a silent witness to their betrayal. "Did you ever love me?" My voice was a low, tremulous whisper, but it silenced the room like a thunderclap. I locked eyes with him, seeking a glimmer of the man I once knew. His silence was answer enough. And then she spoke, my sister, her voice trembling yet defiant. It wasn't meant to happen this way. Her words were a feeble shield against the storm she had unleashed. I wanted to scream, to cry, but the tears refused to fall. They were trapped inside, a storm raging within me, as fierce as the one outside. "You were my family," I said, my voice cracking under the weight of the truth. "You both were." A part of me wanted to forgive, to find solace in understanding, but the chasm between us was too wide, too deep. I realized then that the person I needed to forgive first was myself, for believing in the illusion of their love. In that moment, I saw my future diverging into two paths. One was shrouded in darkness, where revenge festered like a poison, tempting me with promises of justice. The other was a path of light, where I would forge my own destiny, independent and unbroken. I took a shuddering breath, feeling the weight of choice pressing down upon me. I turned away from them, from the wreckage of my past, and stepped into the rain. Each drop was a cleansing tear that the sky wept for me, washing away the remnants of my shattered dreams. I walked away, each step lighter than the last, my heart a phoenix rising from the ashes of betrayal. As I left, I heard her voice, a faint echo on the wind. "I never meant to hurt you." Her words hung in the air, a fragile plea for understanding. But I kept walking, my feet carrying me toward a future that was mine alone to shape. The storm subsided as I reached the edge of town, the first rays of dawn piercing the horizon. It was a new day, and with it came the promise of new beginnings. I was no longer defined by their betrayal, but by my own strength, my own choices. I promised myself then, beneath the pastel sky, that I would not let this betrayal define me. I would rise above it, like the sun rising after the storm, brilliant and unyielding. And as I continued on my path, I knew that every tear, every memory, and every broken promise had forged me into something stronger than I ever thought possible. But as I walked, another twist in my tale emerged, an unexpected revelation that would change everything. Hidden within the shadows of my past, a secret lay waiting to be uncovered, a truth that would lead me back to the very people I had left behind. And as the sun climbed higher, I felt the stirrings of a new chapter, whispering promises of redemption and understanding, of a family not yet lost, but perhaps found anew. My heart shattered into 1,000 irreparable shards the moment I heard the news. It was as if every breath I took was a reminder of the betrayal that had woven itself into the very fabric of my existence. The room spun around me, a kaleidoscope of memories and promises broken, the cruel laughter of fate echoing in the hollow chamber of my chest. How could they? My sister, my flesh and blood, and the man who had promised me forever. The words twisted into my heart like a dagger, each syllable a fresh wound, each breath a reminder of my naivety. I stood there, silent and immobile, as the world around me crumbled. My mother's voice was a distant murmur, a gentle wave crashing against the jagged rocks of my despair. She spoke of family, of forgiveness, as if these were things that could simply paper over the gaping chasm torn through my soul. But how could I forgive when the betrayal was etched into every corner of my being, when my sister's tears were not those of guilt, but of confusion, as if she had stumbled into this web of deceit by accident? The past week had been a blur, whispers behind closed doors, the furtive glances, the way my father couldn't quite meet my eyes. Truths I had been blind to now stood stark and naked before me, a macabre dance of secrets I had unwittingly been part of. I had been living in a house of cards, and a single breath had brought it all tumbling down. I confronted them, my voice a trembling whisper that belied the storm raging within. "Why?" I asked, though the question seemed laughably inadequate. My sister, eyes wide with unshed tears, offered no words, only silence. And Kaito, the man who had once held my heart, who had whispered dreams of our future under starlit skies, could only look away, his silence a confession more damning than any words. The air was thick with the scent of betrayal, a cloying perfume that clung to my skin, seeping into my bones. Memories of us together, the laughter, the promises, played across my mind in cruel repetition. I was a puppet, strings cut, falling into an abyss where love was nothing more than an illusion, an ephemeral wisp of smoke that vanished at the barest touch. In my solitude, I found a bitter solace. I wandered the city streets, each step a futile attempt to outrun the ghosts that haunted me. The lights of the city blurred into a tapestry of tears, a mosaic of shattered dreams. I was lost, an exile in my own life, searching for a way to piece together the fragments of my broken heart. But as the days turned to weeks, a new resolve began to take root within me, a fragile seedling of independence growing in the barren soil of my despair. I would not be the victim of this tragedy, I decided. My pain would not be my prison, it would be my strength. I would reclaim my life, my identity, from the ashes of betrayal. I immersed myself in my work, channeling my emotions into every stroke of the brush, every line of poetry. Art became my refuge, my sanctuary. In creation, I found a semblance of peace, a way to express the turmoil that words could not capture. My art spoke the truths I could not voice, a silent scream against the injustice that had been wrought upon me. Yet, even as I forged a new path, shadows lurked at the edges of my consciousness. My family, once my anchor, now felt like strangers, their familiar faces masks that hid the depths of their deceit. I was adrift, a lone vessel on a sea of uncertainty, but I was determined to find my own way, to chart my own course. And then, just when I thought I had begun to heal, another truth unraveled before me, a thread pulled from the tapestry of my life. A letter, hidden among my sister's belongings, addressed to Kaito. It spoke of love, of a child conceived not in deception, but in longing. It was a story different from the one I had been told, a narrative that cast my sister not as the villain, but as a victim of her own heart. The revelation struck me like a thunderclap, a fresh wave of betrayal mixed with a newfound understanding. My sister had loved Kaito, perhaps as deeply as I had. Her tears, once seen as a testament to her guilt, now revealed a sorrow that mirrored my own. This was not a simple tale of betrayal, but a complex tapestry of love and pain, woven with threads of longing and regret. I confronted her again, not with anger, but with a desperate need for truth. Her confession was a whisper, a fragile bridge stretched between us. She had not meant for this to happen, she swore, each word a plea for understanding. And in her eyes, I saw a reflection of my own heartache, a mirror of the journey I had traveled. In that moment, I realized that forgiveness was not an absolution of her actions, but a release for myself. To hold on to the pain was to let it define me, to allow it to chain me to a past I could never change. I could not control the actions of others, but I could choose my response, my path forward. With a trembling heart, I promised myself to let go of the bitterness that had taken root within me. I would not forget, but I would forgive. Not for them, but for me. And as I stepped into the future, I carried with me the lessons learned, the strength forged in the crucible of betrayal. I was no longer the girl who had been betrayed. I was a woman reborn, my own creation, ready to face whatever life would throw my way. The tears, once a symbol of my pain, now became a testament to my resilience, a reminder that I could endure, that I could rise. And so I walked into the dawn of a new day, the warmth of the rising sun a promise of hope, of new beginnings. The past would always be a part of me, but it would not define me. I was free, and with each step, I crafted a future all my own. The rain hammered against the window, a relentless percussion that matched the storm raging within my chest. I stood frozen in the dim light of my room, the letter crumpled in my trembling hand, each word etched into my mind like a scar. My sister's delicate handwriting danced before my eyes, taunting me with its elegance. "I'm pregnant," it declared, each letter screaming louder than the last. "And it's his!" The air was thick with betrayal, suffocating me as it wrapped around my throat. My fiancé, my sister, two pillars I thought unshakable, now crumbled into the dust of my shattered trust. The scent of betrayal lingered like a ghost in the room, haunting every breath I took. I stumbled backward, my knees colliding with the edge of the bed, sending me crashing into a sea of memories. Memories of laughter shared, of plans whispered under the blanket of night, of promises exchanged beneath starlit skies. Empty promises, now revealed as nothing more than fragile threads, easily severed. Tears, hot and unbidden, traced paths down my cheeks, each drop a testament to the love I had lost, to the loyalty that had been a lie. I clutched at the letter, my knuckles whitening with the force of my grip, as if I could squeeze the truth from its deceitful words. A knock at the door pulled me from my spiral of despair. My mother's voice, gentle yet firm, called out to me. "We need to talk, Ayumi." Her presence was a balm I didn't want, a reminder of a family that had sided with the betrayers. But I couldn't ignore her, not when the truth hung between us like a blade poised to strike. I opened the door, meeting her gaze with a defiance that burned brighter than my tears. She stepped inside, closing the door softly behind her. The room seemed to shrink around us, the walls closing in with the weight of unspoken words. Her eyes held a sadness that mirrored my own, a reflection of a broken family, yet beneath it lay something else, resolution. "Ayumi, we need to find a way through this," she said, her voice a fragile bridge over an abyss of silence. I shook my head, the motion sharp and final. Find a way through what? Through the lies? Through the betrayal? How can I trust any of you? Her hand reached out, brushing against mine, a silent plea for understanding. We didn't know, not until she told us. Your father and I were as blindsided as you. The truth in her voice was undeniable, but it couldn't soothe the raw wound that was my heart. I turned away, my gaze falling on the rain-swept world outside. Did you think I wouldn't find out? That I would just accept it? We hoped you wouldn't have to, that we could protect you from this. Protect me? I laughed, a sound hollow and bitter. You protected them. You protected their secret. The room fell silent, my accusation hanging in the air like a specter. My mother's silence was an admission, a reluctant confirmation of my worst fears. I had been alone in my trust, alone in my love, and now I was alone in my pain. But anger, fierce and unyielding, surged within me, a fire that refused to be extinguished. I turned to my mother, my voice a whisper of steel. I won't be their victim, or yours. I'll carve my own path, away from this. Her eyes widened, a mixture of fear and understanding flaring within their depths. What will you do? I didn't answer because I didn't know. Not yet. But the seed of resolve had been planted, and it would grow, nurtured by the tears I had shed and the promises I had believed. I would find my own way, and it would be a path forged in independence, not betrayal. The days stretched on, each one a journey through the labyrinth of my heart, where memories and new realities waged a war within me. My sister Hannah reached out, her apologies thick with the desperation of one who knew she had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. But her words were as empty as the spaces between us, a chasm widened by the choices she had made. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in blood-red hues, I found myself at the edge of a decision. The piano sat silent in the corner of the room, its keys untouched since the day my world imploded. Music had always been my refuge, my solace, but now it felt like a stranger, a reminder of who I had been before the betrayal. I approached it slowly, my fingers hovering over the keys, each one a promise of sound, of expression. I pressed down, a tentative melody unfurling in the quiet room, each note a step toward reclaiming a part of myself. As the music flowed, so did the tears, an unending cascade of sorrow and hope intertwined. It was in that moment, with the music wrapping around me like a cocoon, that I realized the truth I had been avoiding. The betrayal had been a knife, yes, but it had also been a release, a severing of ties that had bound me to a future I hadn't chosen. I was free now, free to forge my own path, to write my own story. And as the final notes faded into the silence, I knew that I would rise from the ashes of my past, stronger, wiser, and fiercely independent. The tears were no longer a symbol of my pain, but of the strength I had found within myself. Promises may have been broken, but new ones would be made. Promises to myself, unbreakable and unwavering. In the quiet that followed, I whispered a vow into the night, a promise that would guide me forward. I would not be defined by the betrayals of others, but by the strength of my own heart. And with that vow, I stepped into the future, leaving behind the shadows of my past. The world shattered around me, the moment my sister's trembling words pierced the air like shards of glass. "I'm pregnant," she confessed, her voice a fragile whisper, yet it detonated in my heart with the force of 1,000 storms. My fiancé's name lingered unspoken between us, an accusation, a betrayal, a promise broken before it was ever truly given. Tears, hot and unstoppable, blazed trails down my cheeks, each one a silent scream echoing the chaos within. Memories of love, of shared dreams, of whispered promises beneath moonlit skies, all lay in ruins at my feet, their edges sharp enough to cut, their edges dull enough to bruise. I couldn't breathe for fear of inhaling the ashes of what once was. He stood there, a statue carved in guilt, his eyes refusing to meet mine, rooted to the spot where his sins had finally caught up with him. I searched his face for answers, for a flicker of the man I thought I knew, but saw only a stranger cloaked in shadows of deceit. The silence stretched between us, a chasm filled not with the possibility of redemption, but with the certainty of betrayal. Why? The words slipped from my lips, a ghost of a question, haunting in its simplicity. His response was a cascade of excuses, each one more hollow than the last, until finally the facade crumbled, leaving nothing but raw truth exposed to the light. He loved her, he said, and the words struck me like a physical blow, the final twist of the knife already embedded deep in my soul. My family, the ones who should have been my sanctuary, my refuge, turned their backs. Their loyalty shifted to my sister and the life growing within her. I was the outsider now, an intruder in my own story, rewritten by someone else's hand. Their betrayal was a silent conspiracy, a whispered agreement that my pain was less important than their desire for harmony, for the facade of family unity. The world around me blurred, colors bleeding into one another as I stumbled from the room, my feet moving of their own volition, away from the scene of my heart's execution. The walls closed in, the ceiling descended, and I found myself outside, the cool night air a balm to my fevered skin, a reminder that I was still alive, still breathing, still capable of feeling. Revenge whispered to me, seductive and sweet, promising the justice that love had denied me. I could see the path ahead, dark and treacherous, lined with opportunities for retribution. But somewhere, hidden beneath layers of hurt and anger, a spark of something else flickered. Independence. The promise of a life not defined by betrayal, but by the strength to rise from its ashes. I would find my path, I vowed, even if I had to carve it out of the chaos left in their wake. My tears had dried, replaced by a determination as fierce and unyielding as the pain that had birthed it. They would not define me. I would not let them. Days blurred into nights, the passage of time marked only by the slow healing of wounds invisible to the eye. I rebuilt myself, piece by piece, memory by memory, promise by promise. Each step forward was a declaration of defiance, each breath a testament to resilience. But fate, it seemed, was not yet done with me. Unexpected revelations lay in wait, hidden beneath the surface of my newly constructed reality. My sister, burdened by guilt and remorse, reached out, her tears mirroring the ones that had long since dried on my own cheeks. She confessed her own betrayal, her own pain, revealing a truth that shattered my understanding once more. The child she carried was not his, not my fiancé's, but the result of a moment of weakness with another, a stranger in the night whose face she could barely remember. Her love for my fiancé was real, she claimed, but tarnished by her own mistakes, her own fears. She begged for forgiveness, for understanding, for a chance to start anew. I was caught in a whirlwind of emotions, torn between the desire for vengeance and the call of compassion. My heart ached with the weight of new knowledge, the burden of choice. Could I forgive? Could I let go of the anger that had sustained me for so long? In the end, it was the memory of promises, both broken and kept, that guided me. I chose independence, not just from the past, but from the cycle of hurt that had trapped us all. In forgiving my sister, I freed myself, too, from the chains of bitterness that had bound me. And so, I walked forward, into the uncertain light of a new dawn, each step a promise to myself, to the world, that I would not be defined by betrayal, but by the strength to rise above it. The path was mine to walk, and I would do so with my head held high, tears transformed into a resilient smile, memories into lessons, promises into a future of my own making. My heart shattered into a million pieces, each shard slicing through my soul as the words left my sister's lips, hanging in the air like a curse. She stood there, her eyes wide with fear and guilt, her hands nervously clutching the hem of her oversized sweater. I couldn't breathe. The world around me blurred, the room spinning in a kaleidoscope of memories and broken promises. My fiancé's betrayal was a silent scream echoing in the confines of my mind. I felt a storm brewing inside me, a tempest of emotions too chaotic to name. Why? The question slipped out, raw and jagged, cutting through the suffocating silence. The fire crackled in the hearth, a cruel parody of warmth in the icy atmosphere of deceit. My sister's lips quivered, and for a moment, I saw the child she once was, the sister I had loved more than life itself. But reality crashed back, cold and unforgiving. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she whispered, her voice a fragile thread threatening to snap. I wanted to scream, to lash out, to demand how she could do this to me, to us. But instead, I stood frozen, my body a prison of conflicting emotions, betrayal warring with a twisted kind of understanding. Love and hate blurred into an indistinguishable haze, and I was left with nothing but the bitter taste of betrayal. My fiancé, the man I thought I knew, the man I had trusted with my heart, my future, stood silently beside her. His silence was a betrayal of its own, his eyes dark and unreadable. Memories of his whispered promises flooded my mind, sweet words now turned to poison. He had sworn forever, spoken of love that could conquer all. Yet here we were, standing in the ruins of dreams that had once shone so brightly. "I trusted you." My voice rose, each word a stone thrown into the abyss between us. He flinched, guilt flickering across his features. But there was something else there, lurking beneath the surface, a shadow of something I couldn't quite grasp. "Please, let me explain," he started. But I cut him off, the anger boiling over, a dam bursting inside me. "Explain? I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound that echoed in the hollow silence. What is there to explain? You slept with my sister. You... My voice broke, tears finally spilling over, hot and relentless. You destroyed everything. His eyes met mine, and for a moment I saw a flicker of something. Regret, perhaps? But it was too late. The bridge between us had crumbled, leaving only a chasm of betrayal and shattered dreams. As I turned away, my sister reached out, her fingers brushing against my arm, a plea for understanding, for forgiveness. But I couldn't bear it. Her touch was fire, scorching my skin, reminding me of everything I had lost. I pulled away, my heart a fortress of pain. I fled the room, the walls closing in, needing air, space, anything to escape the suffocating weight of their betrayal. Outside, the night was a blanket of stars, indifferent to the chaos unraveling below. I stumbled into the garden, the cold air biting at my cheeks, mingling with the tears that refused to stop. The garden had always been my sanctuary, a place of solace and reflection. But now, even the familiar scent of roses was tainted, a reminder of happier times when my sister and I would sit here, dreaming of futures that now seemed impossibly distant. I sank to the ground, my fingers clawing at the earth as if to anchor myself to something real, something that wouldn't betray me. In the darkness, memories surged, unbidden and relentless. I saw my sister's smile, her laughter ringing in the air, innocent and pure. I remembered the way my fiancé had looked at me, his eyes filled with a promise of forever. Those memories were lies now, each one a dagger twisting in my chest. I didn't know how long I sat there, lost in the labyrinth of my thoughts, the night deepening around me. But when I finally stood, a strange calm settled over me, a resolve forged in the crucible of betrayal. I wiped my tears, the salt stinging my raw skin, and inhaled deeply, the night air filling my lungs, clearing my mind. I wouldn't let their betrayal define me. I wouldn't let it break me. The path before me was uncertain, a winding road through darkness and doubt. But I would walk it, step by step, reclaiming the pieces of myself that lay scattered, rebuilding from the ashes of what once was. There would be no more tears, no more looking back. I was free now, free to forge my own path, to live for myself. The night whispered its secrets as I turned away from the shadows of the past, stepping into the future that awaited me, a future untethered from promises broken and dreams shattered. There would be new dreams, new promises, and this time, they would be mine alone. I stared into the mirror, my reflection distorted through a veil of unshed tears. The night had fallen silent, save for the whispers of betrayal echoing in my mind. My heart, once a sanctuary of warmth, now lay shattered, scattered like shards of glass across the cold, unforgiving floor. How could I have missed the signs? How could the people I trusted most stab me with such cruel precision? The memories played in my mind like a broken film reel. I recalled the moment I first introduced Kenji to my family, the way my sister, Mai, had smiled with a gentle warmth, the same warmth she always reserved for me, a warmth that now seemed like a sickening mockery. I had watched them, obliviously, as they exchanged what I thought were familial glances, never realizing those looks carried the weight of secret promises. When Mai confessed, her words were a venomous whisper in the quiet of the night. "I'm pregnant," she had said, her eyes downcast, the flicker of guilt dancing in their depths. "It's Kenji's." The world had stopped then, my breath caught in a web of disbelief. I wanted to scream, to tear apart the fragile threads of the universe that had betrayed me. But I stood there, frozen, a statue carved from ice, while her words cut deeper than any blade ever could. "Why?" I asked, my voice a fractured whisper, raw and thick with emotion. Mai's tears mirrored my own, but they could not wash away the stain of betrayal. "We never meant to hurt you," she pleaded, her voice cracking under the weight of her guilt. But her remorse was a hollow echo, lost in the chasm of my pain. I turned to my parents, seeking solace, seeking justice, but their silence was the cruelest cut of all. They had known. They had known and said nothing, watched as I planned my future with Kenji, oblivious to the storm gathering on the horizon. Their betrayal was a quiet, insidious thing, a poison that seeped into my veins, leaving me numb. Now, as dawn broke over the horizon, painting the sky with hues of crimson and gold, I knew what I had to do. Revenge was a dangerous path, one that could consume me whole, but I had no choice. I had to reclaim my life, had to find the strength to rise from the ashes of my broken heart. I set my plan into motion, a silent promise to myself. I would confront Kenji, strip away the lies and deceit that had bound us. I would make him see the depth of his betrayal, make him feel the weight of his choices. But most importantly, I would find my freedom, untethered from the chains of a love that had turned to dust. When I arrived at Kenji's apartment, he opened the door with a smile that quickly faded when he saw the resolve etched into my features. "We need to talk," I said, my voice carrying the strength of 1,000 unshed tears. He tried to explain, to weave a tapestry of excuses and apologies, but I refused to listen. "There's nothing left to say," I interrupted, meeting his gaze with a steely determination. You've taken everything from me, but you will not take my future." As I turned to leave, a flicker of something crossed his face. Was it regret? Before it vanished into the shadows of our shared past. I walked away, each step a testament to my newfound independence, a silent vow to never be caged by betrayal again. In the days that followed, I found solace in the unexpected, the quiet strength of my own company, the gentle embrace of self-discovery. Each tear shed was a step towards healing, each memory revisited a chapter closed. I learned to forge new promises, not to others but to myself, promises of strength, resilience, and the courage to face whatever life might throw my way. But life, as it often does, had one more twist in store. As I began to rebuild, to find peace in the wreckage, a letter arrived from Mai. It spoke of regret, of choices made in moments of weakness. But buried within her words was a revelation that shattered everything I thought I knew. Kenji had never been the father. The betrayal was not as it seemed, the tangled web more intricate than I had imagined. The truth was a double-edged sword, cutting through the fog of my assumptions. Mai's child was the result of a fleeting moment, a stranger who had offered her solace in a moment of despair. Kenji had been complicit, yes, but in a different story, one rooted in fear and desperation rather than deceit. As the truth unfolded, I found myself at a crossroads. The path of revenge seemed hollow now, a shadow of its former self. In its place, the seeds of forgiveness began to take root, fragile and tentative, but there nonetheless. In the end, it was not vengeance that set me free, but understanding, the realization that we are all flawed, that we all carry our burdens and scars. And in that understanding, I found the strength to forgive, to let go of the past, and to step into a future unburdened by the chains of betrayal. The tears that once symbolized my pain now marked the beginning of my journey towards healing, a journey that was mine and mine alone. And as I moved forward, I carried with me the memories, the promises, and the lessons learned, symbols of the woman I had become, unbreakable and free. The world shattered when I found the pregnancy test in the trash, like a shard of glass piercing the tender skin of reality. My heart, once a fortress of dreams and promises, now lay in ruins, every piece echoing with the laughter and whispers of betrayal. I stared at the 2 lines, red as the blood that no longer felt like family, and the realization hit me like a violent storm. My sister, my flesh and blood, carried the seed of my fiancé. "Yuki!" My voice trembled, barely a whisper, yet it was enough to slice through the thick silence. Her eyes, wide and glistening with unshed tears, met mine. They were the same eyes that once mirrored my own joys and sorrows, now a reflection of guilt and secrets. She opened her mouth to speak, but the words clung to her throat, unwilling to betray her further. The room seemed to spin, the walls closing in like the pages of a book I wished to tear apart. I felt the weight of memories, the laughter we shared, the promises exchanged under the cherry blossoms, the dreams we built like fragile castles in the sky. They suffocated me, each memory a reminder of what was now lost, each promise a blade twisting in my heart. "Why?" I asked, my voice breaking like the dawn over a battlefield. A simple question, yet it held the gravity of 1,000 storms. Her silence spoke louder than any confession, and in that quiet, I heard the echoes of my own naivety. "It just happened," she finally murmured, her voice a brittle leaf in the wind. But I could see it in her eyes. The truth was more complex, a tangled web of desires and regrets. My sister, the one I had always protected, had crossed an unspeakable line, and now we stood on opposite sides of a chasm that seemed impossible to bridge. I turned away, each step a betrayal of my own, as if walking away from her could distance me from the reality that threatened to drown me. Outside, the world continued its indifferent spin, the sun setting in a blaze of colors too beautiful for my shattered heart. I sought refuge in the night, its darkness a mirror to my despair. Days passed in a blur, a tapestry of pain and numbness. My family, once a sanctuary, now felt like a gallery of traitors. My parents' silence was a verdict, their eyes avoiding mine, as if the truth was too shameful to acknowledge. I realized then that their loyalty had been quietly transferred, a subtle shift in the balance of love and kinship, and I stood alone, a solitary figure in a portrait of betrayal. But even as I waded through the murky waters of my grief, a spark ignited within me, a flame of defiance, of revenge, of an independence I had never dared to claim. I would not be the victim of their story. I would not let their betrayal define me. I would rise, like a phoenix from the ashes of broken promises and shattered dreams. It was then, in those darkest moments, that I discovered a letter tucked beneath my pillow, its presence both a comfort and a mystery. The handwriting was familiar, yet not my own, a script that danced between the lines of the past and the present. It was from him, my fiancé, the architect of my ruin. "I never meant for this to happen," the letter began, a confession and an apology wrapped in words that were both tender and cruel. He spoke of confusion, of a love that had faltered and fallen into forbidden arms. His words were a mosaic of excuses and truths, a tapestry of emotions that left me breathless with anger and sorrow. But hidden within the lines was a revelation, a truth that turned the world on its head. He wrote of a promise made long before our engagement, a pact with my sister that predated our love. She had been his first, the original muse of his affections, and their bond had never truly been severed. The realization struck me like lightning, illuminating the shadows of my ignorance. I had been a pawn in a game I never knew I was playing, a placeholder for a love that had never truly been mine. The depth of their betrayal was a wound that would never fully heal, yet it also freed me from the chains of illusion. With trembling hands, I set the letter ablaze, watching as the flames consumed the words, the promises, the pain. It was a ritual of purification, a farewell to a past that could no longer hold me captive. I was free, and in that freedom, I found the strength to rebuild, to redefine who I was beyond the roles they had cast for me. I moved forward, step by step, into a future that was mine alone to shape. The path was uncertain, lined with memories that still lingered like ghosts, but I embraced the journey with a heart unburdened by their deceit. I was no longer the betrayed sister, the scorned lover. I was my own, and that was a promise I intended to keep. It wasn't the whispered rumors or the sidelong glances that shattered me. No, it was the moment I stumbled upon the truth, raw and unadorned, like a jagged shard of glass buried in my chest. My heart was a fragile thing, a paper-thin promise that had been carelessly torn, and there, at the center of my world, stood the two people who had wielded the knife. The cherry blossoms fluttered like dying dreams around me as I confronted them in the garden. My sister, Hana, with her porcelain skin and starry eyes, stood beside Kazuo, the man I had once thought was my forever. The breeze carried the scent of betrayal, and I could taste it, bitter and metallic, as my world crumbled. "You knew," I whispered, my voice a fragile echo of the storm within. "You both knew what you were doing, and yet you chose this." Kazuo's eyes, once warm and full of promises, were now dark pools of guilt. He opened his mouth to speak, but it was Hana who cut through the silence. "It wasn't supposed to be like this, Aiko. We never meant—" "Don't!" I snapped, my heart twisting at the sight of her tears. Tears that mirrored my own, yet felt like a betrayal in themselves. "You're carrying his child, Hana. There's no turning back from that." The words hung heavy in the air, a noose of reality tightening around us. I turned away, unable to bear the sight of them together, and the memories flooded back with relentless clarity. The days when Kazuo's laughter had been my favorite melody, when Hana's smile had been my compass in the storm. Those memories were now ghosts, haunting the ruins of my trust. In the days that followed, the house felt like a labyrinth of whispers and shadows. My parents, their faces etched with the weight of secrets, avoided my eyes, as if my pain were a contagion they feared to catch. Their silence was a betrayal all its own, a tacit agreement with the lie that had become my reality. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of melancholy, I found myself at the edge of the old koi pond. The water rippled with memories, and I saw my reflection, fractured and unfamiliar. It was there that I made my decision, a promise to myself forged in the fires of my hurt. I would not be their victim, not anymore. The next morning, I packed a suitcase with the essentials: clothes, a few cherished books, and the remnants of my dignity. As I stepped into the hallway, my mother appeared, her eyes pleading, her hands reaching out as if to pull me back into the fold of their deceit. "Aiko, please," she began, her voice a fragile bridge over the chasm between us. "We're still family. We can work through this." "Family doesn't do this to each other," I replied, my voice steady, a river of resolve. "I need to find myself away from this, away from all of you." Her tears fell, silent and unanswered, as I walked past her. Each step was a severance, a release from the chains of their expectations and my own misplaced loyalty. I was leaving the ashes of my past behind, stepping into a future that was uncharted, daunting, but undeniably mine. The train station bustled with life, with stories that wove in and out of each other like the threads of a tapestry. I found solace in the anonymity, in the idea that here, amidst strangers, I could begin anew. As the train pulled away, carrying me towards the unknown, I closed my eyes and let the rhythm of the journey soothe the raw edges of my heart. Days turned into weeks, and I carved out a new existence in a small coastal town where the sea sang a lullaby of healing. I found work in a quaint tea shop, my days filled with the comforting rituals of brewing and serving. The owner, Mrs. Tanaka, was a kind woman with wise eyes, and she offered me not just a job, but a sanctuary. It was there, amidst the steam and the scent of jasmine, that I met Yuki. He was a painter with a soul as deep as the ocean, and his presence was like a balm to my wounded spirit. We spoke of dreams and fears, our conversations weaving a tapestry of connection that felt like home. But life, with its penchant for irony, wasn't done with me yet. One afternoon, as I was closing up the shop, a familiar figure appeared in the doorway. It was Hana, her face drawn and weary, yet carrying an air of determination that mirrored my own. "Aiko," she said, her voice a tremor of desperation. "I need your help. Kazuo, he's gone. He left us." Her words were a spark in the tinderbox of my heart, igniting a fire of emotions that I had thought long extinguished. Anger, pity, and a reluctant empathy swirled within me, clashing and merging until I could no longer distinguish one from the other. "What do you expect me to say?" I asked, my voice a fragile thread of restraint. "You made your choice, Hana. You both did." "I know," she replied, tears glistening in her eyes, reflecting the broken promises that lay between us. "But I'm scared, Aiko. I don't know how to do this alone." Her vulnerability was a dagger to my resolve, and I found myself torn between the desire to protect my heart and the instinct to protect my sister. The same sister who had shattered my trust, yet was now standing before me, a portrait of remorse and fear. In that moment, I realized that independence didn't mean isolation. It meant choosing, every day, where to place my heart and whom to share it with. It was a lesson learned in the crucible of betrayal and tempered by the flames of resilience. I reached out, my hand finding hers, and in that simple gesture, a silent promise passed between us. A promise to rebuild, not what was lost, but something new, something stronger. As we stood there, beneath the setting sun, I knew that the journey ahead would be fraught with challenges and unexpected turns. But I also knew that I was no longer defined by the scars of my past. I was Aiko, a woman forged in love and betrayal, standing on the precipice of a future I would create with my own hands. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. The world shattered at my feet, its shards piercing my heart with each whisper of betrayal. I stood alone in the kitchen, the air heavy with the scent of betrayal, the silence mocking my naivety. My hand trembled as I clutched the letter, the words blurring through a film of tears. How could they? How could he? My own blood, my own sister, pregnant with the child of the man I thought I would spend my life with. Memories, once cherished, now twisted like vines around my mind, choking my breath. Memories of us laughing, him holding my hand, promises murmured under the stars. I could still hear his voice, smooth as silk, weaving lies I had been so desperate to believe. I could still see my sister's eyes, always averted, now revealing the hidden depths of her betrayal. The door creaked open behind me, and I turned, my heart a wild drumbeat of anger and sorrow. There she was, my sister, eyes downcast, her hands cradling the secret that had torn us apart. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she whispered, her voice a fragile thread in the heavy air. "How could you?" My voice cracked, the words spilling out like a flood, each syllable a bullet I wished I could retract. "You were my sister. You were supposed to be on my side to protect me, not this." She flinched as if struck, but the tears in her eyes were not enough to douse the flames of betrayal that roared within me. The silence stretched between us, an abyss filled with broken dreams and shattered trust. Her lips moved, but the words were drowned by the roaring in my ears, the sound of everything I had believed in crumbling. From the corner of my eye, I saw a figure in the doorway. Him. He stood there, his face a mask of remorse. Or was it guilt? It was hard to tell. "I never meant to hurt you," he began, but his voice was drowned by the storm of emotions twisting inside me. "You never meant to hurt me?" I repeated, the words like ash in my mouth. "You promised me forever. You promised me a future, and now you've taken it away. Both of you." He reached out, a futile gesture of reconciliation, but I stepped back, the movement a severing of ties that once bound us together. I saw in his eyes the reflection of the man I once loved, now a stranger wrapped in deceit. "Leave," I said, my voice steady, even as the tears threatened to break free once more. "Both of you. Leave me with what little dignity I have left." They hesitated, as if my command was a chain holding them back, but slowly, reluctantly, they turned and walked away. The door closed behind them with a finality that echoed within the hollow chambers of my heart. Alone in the silence, I sank to the floor, the cold tiles a cruel comfort against my despair. I let the tears fall, a river of anguish that carried with it the remnants of a past I could never reclaim. But in the depths of my despair, a spark of something new ignited: independence. The promise I made to myself as a child, to never let anyone else define my worth. I would rise from these ashes, stronger, unbroken. As the sun set outside, casting long shadows that crept across the floor, I stood, wiping away the last of my tears. I would not forget this pain, nor would I let it consume me. Instead, it would be the foundation upon which I would build a new future. The days that followed were a blur of decisions and quiet resolve. I reached out to my family, seeking solace, but was met with uncomfortable silences and half-hearted apologies. They had known. They had known and said nothing, choosing silence over loyalty. It was in those moments that I realized the depth of my solitude, the stark reality that I had to forge my own path. And so I did, step by step, reclaiming the fragments of my life that had been scattered by betrayal. One day, as I sorted through old photographs, memories flashing by with each image, I found a note tucked away in a forgotten journal. Written in my sister's hand, it was a promise of loyalty, a bond we had sworn in our youth. The irony was bitter, but it was also liberating. I could let go, free myself from the chains of the past. Months passed, and with each passing day, I grew stronger. The world, once painted in shades of grief, began to bloom with new colors. I found solace in the unexpected places, a stranger's kindness, a friend's unwavering support, the quiet strength within myself. Yet, just as I began to feel the warmth of healing, a letter arrived, its envelope crisp and unfamiliar. I hesitated, the past clawing at the corners of my mind. With a deep breath, I opened it, the words inside unraveling another twist to the tale I thought I had finished. It was from him, my former fiancé, the man who had woven the web of lies that ensnared us all. The words were an apology, a confession, a plea for understanding. He claimed he had been manipulated by forces beyond his control, a victim of circumstances I could scarcely fathom. I laughed, the sound brittle and hollow in the quiet room. More lies, more deceit. Or was it? A seed of doubt took root, feeding on the uncertainty that had always lurked beneath the surface of my resolve. The past was not yet done with me, it seemed. It clung like a shadow, whispering secrets I had yet to uncover. As I folded the letter, a new determination filled me. I would seek the truth, unravel the tangled threads of deception that still bound my heart. And in doing so, I would find the final piece of my independence, the closure that would finally set me free.